Commander Torque stood before the large viewing screen, his 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the blue planet. Earth, the humans called it. So much water for one world. So wasteful. "Play the transmissions again," he ordered. His second-in-command, Officer Mrek, tapped the control panel. The room filled with sounds of human music, radio shows, and military communications, all of it open, unprotected. The sounds of a species that had never known true war. 12 cycles we have watched them, Torque said, his scaled skin shifting from deep blue to a reddish hue as he thought. They fight among themselves constantly, yet they never use their full power. Strange. Perhaps they are more dangerous than they appear, Mrek suggested. The High Command believes. I know what the High Command believes. Torque cut him off. That is why we are here. The Vrax Empire had conquered 12 star systems. They had never lost a war. Each species they encountered either joined them or perished. But humans were different. Their civilization was chaotic, disorganized. They spent resources on art and entertainment that should have gone to weapons. They explored space with curiosity rather than military purpose. Yet the High Command feared them. Human history showed incredible leaps in technology over short periods. What took other species centuries, humans accomplished in decades. And their weapons, though primitive, grew more deadly with each passing year. The latest intelligence report, an analyst said, approaching with a data tablet. Their military forces remain divided by nations. No unified space defense. Their most advanced weapons are nuclear missiles with limited range. Torque took the tablet. Their satellites. Simple communication devices. Some primitive surveillance technology. Nothing that could detect our ships if we remain in shadow mode. Torque nodded slowly. The High Command's order was clear. A preemptive strike against humanity before they became a true threat. Strike hard, strike fast, force their surrender before they could unite. Begin preparations, Torque ordered. First wave will target their orbital structures. Second wave will strike military bases. We will show them such force that surrender becomes their only option. On Earth, life continued as normal. People went to work. Children attended schools. Scientists made small discoveries. And politicians argued about trivial matters. No one looked up at the stars with fear. In his small apartment, Tom Miller, a former military engineer now working for a private tech company, sat at his desk tinkering with a personal project. His company didn't see the commercial value in his ideas about adaptive defense systems, so he worked on them in his free time. Just a hobby. Still working on that thing? His roommate asked, bringing him coffee. Just some ideas, Tom replied. Probably nothing useful. At a university lab across the country, Professor Helen Reed supervised her graduate students as they tested a new energy transfer system. Their grant proposal had promised applications in clean energy, though Helen knew the principles could be applied to other fields. The military had passed on funding her research years ago. Too theoretical, they said. Meanwhile, in orbit, the International Space Station crew noticed a brief anomaly in their communications system. The technician made a note to check it later. Probably just solar interference. None of them knew that the anomaly was caused by the Vrax scout ships, moving into position around Earth. None of them knew that within 24 hours, humanity would face its greatest challenge. Commander Torque gave the final order to his fleet. Prepare all weapons. At dawn, we will show these humans what real war looks like. He had no doubt it would be a swift victory. After all, the humans had never faced a true enemy before. They would break quickly, like all the others. How wrong he was. The first attack came at dawn, just as Torque had ordered. Bright flashes lit up Earth's sky as the space station and key satellites exploded. Within minutes, global communications became spotty. Television broadcasts cut out. Internet connections failed in many regions. First wave successful, Commander Mrek reported. Their orbital defenses have been eliminated. Torque nodded, his skin turning a pleased yellow shade. Begin the second wave. Target their largest military bases. On Earth, confusion spread quickly. News channels that remained operational showed scattered reports of meteor showers and satellite malfunctions. Government officials rushed to emergency meetings. Military bases around the world went on high alert. Major Jack Reynolds was drinking his morning coffee when the call came. 5 years retired from active duty, he now worked as a military consultant. The voice on the phone was tense. "Major, we need you at the base. Now." "What's happening?" Reynolds asked, already moving to grab his coat. Unknown aircraft over multiple bases worldwide. Not responding to communication. "We're under attack." Reynolds froze for a second. Who would attack every major power simultaneously? That's suicide. The answer came 30 minutes later as he stood in the command center of Fort Bradley, watching screens show strange, disc-shaped craft firing energy weapons at military targets. Not human aircraft. Not human weapons. "My God," someone whispered. The base shook as explosions hit nearby. Warning sirens blared. "They're targeting our missile silos, aircraft hangars, and command centers," General Parker said, his face grim. "Precision strikes. They know exactly where to hit us." Reynolds studied the footage. "But they're ignoring the research facilities. The tech sectors." He pointed to a map showing attack patterns. "They're taking out what they think are our best weapons, but..." He didn't finish the thought. The room shook again, harder this time. "We need to evacuate," Parker ordered. "Now." Across the ocean, Professor Helen Reed watched in horror as news reports showed destruction worldwide. Her phone rang. It was her former student, now working at a tech company. "Professor, are you seeing this?" Tom Miller's voice crackled through poor connection. "Yes. Aliens. It's really happening," she said, still struggling to believe it. "Listen, that energy transfer system we were working on, I think we could modify it to..." The line went dead as another communication satellite was destroyed. In orbit, Commander Torque watched the chaos with satisfaction. His ships had destroyed Earth's major military installations in just 6 hours. Their fighter jets fell from the sky before getting close to his vessels. Their missiles were intercepted with ease. "Send the message," he ordered. "Demand their surrender." The transmission went out on all frequencies in all human languages. The message was simple: surrender or face extinction. But the response was not what he expected. Instead of one unified answer, hundreds of different replies came back. Some human leaders demanded to know who the attackers were. Others promised retaliation. Some offered negotiation. A few smaller nations even tried to ally with the invaders against their Earth enemies. "This is chaotic," Mrek said, confused. "Do they not have a world government?" Torque's skin darkened with concern. "No. Their planet is divided into nearly 200 sovereign territories. Then who do we negotiate surrender with?" Torque had no answer. The Vraks had never encountered a species so politically fractured yet technologically advanced. It made no sense. As night fell over the smoking ruins of Earth's military bases, emergency meetings convened in bunkers and secure facilities around the world. For the first time in human history, all major powers faced the same enemy. "We need to work together," Reynolds told the gathered military leaders at Fort Bradley's underground command center. "This is no longer about nations. It's about our species." Across the world, in a university basement lit by emergency power, Professor Reed and her students began repurposing their equipment. "They destroyed our military," she told them as they worked. "But our best technology was never in those bases to begin with." The invasion had begun, but so had humanity's real response. 3 months into the invasion, Commander Torque paced the bridge of his ship. His skin had taken on a worried purple color that his officers noticed but dared not mention. "Show me the latest attack results," he ordered. Officer Mrek displayed a holographic map of Earth. Red dots showed successful Vrak strikes. Blue areas marked human resistance. There were far too many blue areas. "This makes no sense," Torque growled. We destroyed their major military bases in the first week. Their aircraft carriers are at the bottom of their oceans. Their air forces are decimated. Yet they continue to fight. They are adapting, Mrek said carefully. This footage was captured yesterday. The screen showed human fighters using what appeared to be modified civilian aircraft. They were faster than military jets and equipped with weapons the Vraks had never seen before. Where did these come from? Torque demanded. We believe they converted their passenger aircraft, an analyst explained. And the weapons appear to be based on technology from their scientific research facilities, not their military. Torque's four eyes blinked in confusion. You mean their civilian science was more advanced than their military technology? It appears so, Commander. On Earth, Major Reynolds stood in what had once been a luxury car factory. Now it produced armored vehicles with makeshift weapons. Engineers who once designed sports cars now created vehicles that could withstand alien attacks. How soon can we deploy these? Reynolds asked the lead engineer, a woman named Kate who had been designing race cars 3 months ago. 2 days, she replied, wiping grease from her hands. We've modified the energy absorption system from our electric vehicle batteries to help deflect their weapons. Reynolds nodded, impressed. Across the country, across the world, similar transformations were happening. Toy drone makers now built combat reconnaissance vehicles. Video game designers created simulation systems to train fighters. Everyday people found ways to fight back. His phone rang. It was a secure line to what remained of military command. Reynolds, we need you in Washington. There's someone you need to meet. 12 hours later, Reynolds sat in a bunker beneath the ruins of the Pentagon. Across from him was Professor Helen Reed, her eyes tired but determined. I've been working on an energy containment system, she explained, showing him diagrams. Originally for clean power generation, but we've modified it to create a shield against their weapons. A shield? Is that even possible? 3 months ago, I would have said no. But we've learned a lot from studying debris from their ships. She smiled grimly. They're advanced, but not as advanced as they think. Some of their technology is actually quite inefficient. In orbit, Torque received more disturbing reports. Human resistance was growing stronger, not weaker. Their weapons were becoming more effective each week. And strangest of all, they were developing countermeasures to Vrak's technology that should have been far beyond their understanding. We intercepted this communication, Mrek said, playing an audio file. The quantum field disruptor was just a theoretical project before the invasion, a human voice said. But now we've built a working prototype. If it works, their shields won't. Torque shut off the recording, his skin paling to an ashen gray. They had this technology all along, he asked quietly. No, Commander, Mrek replied. They're creating it now. They're learning, adapting. Our intelligence suggests their military funding before the invasion was only a small percentage of their scientific capabilities. Most of their advanced research was in their civilian sector. Torque stared at the blue planet on his view screen. The Vrak's military doctrine was clear. Hit the enemy's strengths first. Break their will to fight. Forced surrender. But humanity's strength wasn't in their military. It was in their ability to adapt, to innovate under pressure. We need to change our strategy, Torque said finally. This is not the swift victory the High Command expected. As he spoke, on the planet below, Professor Reed activated her shield prototype. For the first time, a Vrak's energy weapon struck a human facility and did no damage. The real war was just beginning. 6 months into the war, Earth looked different. Cities bore scars from alien attacks, but they were not defeated. Instead, they had transformed. Factory smokestacks that once stood silent now poured smoke into the sky as production ran day and night. In what used to be the headquarters of Global Tech, the world's largest tech company, CEO Robert West addressed a room of engineers and programmers. The company had once made phones, computers, and social media platforms. Now it had one focus: war. Our AI prediction system is operational, West announced. Based on 6 months of attack data, we can now predict Vrak's movement patterns with 78% accuracy. On the large screen behind him, red dots showed likely targets for tomorrow's alien attacks. The system learned and improved each day, analyzing thousands of battle reports from around the world. We've sent this to all resistance groups, he continued. Every military bunker, every guerrilla force. One engineer raised her hand. What about Project Mirror? West nodded grimly. Phase 1 begins tonight. They've been listening to our communications. Now we'll listen to theirs. In orbit, Commander Torque received alarming news. 12 ships damaged in the last week, Mrek reported. The humans are targeting weak points we didn't know we had. How? Torque demanded, slamming his fist on the console. Their weapons should be no match for our shields. They're using our own energy signatures against us, Mrek explained. Somehow they've mapped our shield frequencies. What Mrek didn't know was that 3 college students working in a basement had cracked the Vrak's shield code using gaming computers and software designed for music production. The solution had spread globally within days through encrypted channels. Major Reynolds now worked from a mobile command center, a converted tour bus that moved location every night. Inside, he coordinated with Professor Reed's team of scientists. The shield technology is being manufactured in 20 countries now, Reed explained over the secure video link. Her laboratory had relocated underground after 2 Vrak's attacks. But we've improved it. Version 3 goes beyond defense. Reynolds leaned closer to the screen. What do you mean? It doesn't just block their energy weapons, Reed said with the first smile he'd seen in months. It captures the energy. We can use it to power our own systems. That's, Reynolds struggled for words. Game-changing, Reed finished for him. And there's more. Remember Tom Miller? Your former student. He's captured a Vrak scout ship, intact. They're bringing it to my lab. Reynolds felt something he hadn't felt in 6 months, hope. On his flagship, Torque reviewed intelligence reports with growing alarm. Human communications intercepted by Vrak spies mentioned weapons divisions, experimental technology, and classified research that their initial scans of Earth had never detected. Did we miss these military installations? He asked his intelligence officer. No, Commander. We've discovered these aren't traditional military facilities. They're private companies, civilian research labs, even universities. Torque's skin darkened to a deep blue of concern. You mean their war production was hidden in plain sight, disguised as civilian facilities? It appears they didn't convert them until after our attack began. Torque turned to stare at the view screen showing Earth. The Vrak's empire had conquered 12 species, all of which had their best technology in military hands, all of which surrendered when their military might was broken. Humans were different. They had kept their most advanced technology in civilian hands, developing it for commerce, convenience, entertainment, until they needed it for war. Send a message to High Command, Torque ordered. The humans appear to have been hiding their true capabilities, not in secret bases, but in plain sight. We may have miscalculated. As he spoke, at Global Tech headquarters, engineers activated Project Mirror. For the first time, they began intercepting and decoding Vrak's communications. The humans weren't just defending anymore. They were preparing to strike back. 1 year after the Vrak's invasion began, Earth had changed completely. Nations that once fought each other now worked together against a common enemy. Old borders meant little when alien ships flew overhead. In Geneva, representatives from every surviving government met in an underground bunker. On the wall, a large screen showed the current state of the war. For the first time, there were more green markers, human victories, than red ones, Vrak's attacks. The Unified Defense Network is online, announced the Secretary General. All remaining military forces now coordinate through a single command structure. Major Reynolds stood at the back of the room. He had been promoted to colonel after leading 3 successful operations against Vrak's ground forces. His uniform was worn, his face tired, but his eyes remained sharp. "And what about the new weapons systems?" asked the representative from Russia. Professor Reed stepped forward. No longer just a university researcher, she now led the Global Defense Science Division, a team of 12,000 scientists and engineers from around the world. "Phase 1 deployment is complete," she said. "The energy shield now protects 28 major cities. Phase 2 begins tomorrow." She didn't explain what Phase 2 was. Even in this secure room, some information remained classified. What she didn't say was that humanity was no longer just defending. They were preparing to take the fight to the enemy. In orbit, Commander Torque faced the most difficult report of his career. His skin had turned a pale gray, the color of defeat in Vrak's culture. "Repeat that," he ordered the scout ship commander on the screen. "Sir, the humans have developed weapons that can penetrate our shields. They're using principles our scientists thought were theoretical." Base 7 was completely destroyed. Torque closed all 4 of his eyes briefly. Base 7 had been their largest ground installation on the planet. "How is this possible?" he asked, though he was beginning to understand. "We destroyed their military capability in the first month." Officer Mrek, who had been analyzing human communication patterns, spoke up. "Sir, I believe we misunderstood their society. Their military wasn't equipped with their best technology. It was equipped with what their political leaders would fund." "Explain," Torque demanded. "Their scientific development wasn't driven by war like ours. It was driven by competition between private entities, entertainment, convenience. When we attacked, we forced them to redirect all that creative energy toward fighting us. On Earth, in a former auto manufacturing plant, now converted to produce advanced weapons, Tom Miller led Reynolds through rows of gleaming devices that looked nothing like traditional human weapons. We reversed engineered their scout ship," Miller explained. "But then we improved it. Their power systems are actually inefficient compared to what we were already developing for next-generation electric vehicles." Reynolds picked up what looked like a small silver disc. "And this? That disrupts their communication systems, based on technology we were developing to improve cell phone signals." Miller smiled grimly. "Turns out the principles that make a good phone network can also make a very effective weapon against alien communication grids." They walked to the test area where the captured Vrak scout ship sat. Around it, dozens of engineers worked, taking it apart, understanding its systems, and improving upon them. "Their technology isn't that far ahead of ours," Miller said. "We just never had a reason to build weapons this advanced before. No enemy forced us to." In orbit, Torque made a difficult decision. He sent a message to the High Command. "The humans possess technological capabilities far beyond our initial assessment. Their adaptability exceeds anything we have encountered. Request permission to deploy the Sunbreaker weapon." The reply came quickly. "Permission denied. Sunbreaker would violate galactic conventions. Continue conventional warfare." Torque stared at the message in disbelief. For the first time in Vrak's history, the High Command feared escalation. They feared what the humans might develop in response to the Sunbreaker. The awakening giant was beginning to show its true strength. 18 months after first contact, the war had changed dramatically. Humans were no longer just defending. They were attacking. Colonel Reynolds stood on the deck of the U.S. Hope, once a cruise ship, now the command center for Operation Pushback. Around him, a fleet of vessels moved across the Pacific Ocean. Some were military ships that had survived the early days of the invasion. Others were fishing boats, cargo ships, and even private yachts, all modified with technology that didn't exist a year ago. "All vessels report ready, sir," his communications officer said. Reynolds nodded. "Begin the operation." Above them, 5 Vrak's warships patrolled, their sensors sweeping the ocean below. They didn't notice anything unusual until it was too late. From the water, 200 devices launched simultaneously. Not missiles, but small drones developed by a video game company that once made toys. They flew in patterns that confused Vrak's targeting systems, patterns created by teenagers who had spent years mastering video games. The Vrax ships fired, hitting some drones but missing most. Then the real attack began. From the U.S. Hope, Professor Reed activated the weapon they called Blackout. Based on principles she had been researching for clean energy transmission, it sent an electromagnetic pulse that was specifically tuned to Vrax technology. In orbit, Commander Torque watched in horror as the screens on his bridge flickered and died. Emergency systems kicked in, but they were limited. "Report," he shouted. "5 ships disabled over the Pacific region," Rex said, his voice shaking. "Communications and weapons offline. And sir, the humans are boarding them." Torque's skin turned white with shock. Boarding? How can they even reach orbit? The answer came from a small research facility in New Mexico, where scientists had been quietly working on space elevator technology before the war. They had never received full government funding. Their project was considered too experimental, too expensive by military planners. Now, with the resources of a desperate planet behind them, they had made it work. Human strike teams were riding modified space elevators directly to the disabled Vrax ships. In his command ship, still safely out of range of the Blackout weapon, Torque received worse news. "Sir, our communications network has been hacked," a technician reported. "Human code is spreading through our systems. They're using our own communication channels against us." This attack came from a team led by Tom Miller, who had discovered that Vrax computer security was surprisingly vulnerable to techniques developed by Earth hackers to break into corporate systems. The aliens had never needed strong cybersecurity because no species they conquered had ever tried this approach. On one of the disabled Vrax ships, Colonel Reynolds led the boarding party. Using weapons and protective gear developed by Professor Reed's team, they fought their way to the bridge. There they found the ship's commander, an officer named Kraz. "Surrender your vessel," Reynolds demanded. Kraz stared at the humans in disbelief. "How is this possible? You were primitive. We destroyed your military. You destroyed what we allowed our politicians to build," Reynolds corrected him. "You never saw what we were capable of when we actually tried." Back on his command ship, Torque made a desperate decision. He would capture a human leader and learn the truth about their capabilities. He selected a small strike force and headed for the last known location of the human scientist who had created the shield technology, Professor Reed. His ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, avoiding detection using their most advanced cloaking technology. But as they approached the U.S. Hope, alarms blared. "Sir, they've detected us," Rex shouted. "Their sensors shouldn't be able to." A beam of energy, pure white light, shot from the ship below. It wasn't like any weapon the Vrax had seen before. It didn't explode or burn. It simply stopped things. Torque felt his ship freeze in midair. Engines died. Controls locked. They hung there, suspended by technology the humans had developed in just 18 months. "Prepare to be boarded," came a human voice over their communication system. "Commander Torque, we've been expecting you." Commander Torque sat in a plane room aboard the U.S. Hope. His 4 arms were unbound, a sign of respect, but also confidence. The humans knew he couldn't escape. The door opened, and Colonel Reynolds entered with Professor Reed. Behind them came Tom Miller, carrying a tablet. "Commander Torque," Reynolds said, taking a seat across from the alien. "Thank you for agreeing to talk." Torque's skin shifted to a dull blue, the color of resignation. "I don't appear to have much choice." "Actually, you do," Reed said. "We're not like you. We don't conquer for the sake of conquest." Miller placed the tablet on the table and played a recording, a message from the Vrax High Command that human hackers had intercepted just hours ago. "Commander Torque is ordered to deploy all remaining forces against Earth's population centers. Maximum casualties will force surrender." Torque's skin darkened with shame. "I never received that order." "Because we blocked it," Miller explained. "Your fleet is cut off from High Command. They think you're dead." Reynolds leaned forward. We want to understand. Why did you attack us? Torque considered the question. After 2 years of war, after seeing what humans were capable of, the original reason seemed foolish. We believed you were a threat, he admitted. Your technology was advancing rapidly. Our projections showed you would surpass us within a century. Reed laughed softly. It took us less than 2 years once you gave us a reason. That's what I don't understand, Torque said. How did you develop so quickly? Where were these weapons before we attacked? They weren't weapons, Miller explained. They were ideas, theories, research projects, things we developed for peace, for commerce, for convenience. Your people put all your best minds into war, Reed added. We put ours into everything else. Medicine, entertainment, communication, transportation. Reynolds nodded. When you attacked, we didn't just use our military technology. We redirected everything else toward defense. That's why you couldn't win. In orbit, the Vrax fleet hung motionless, disabled by human technology. On Earth, resistance forces had captured every Vrax ground base. The war was effectively over. In the Vrax home system, 12 light-years away, the High Command received a message. It had been sent using their own communication technology, but originated from Earth. The message contained full specifications of human weapons capabilities, scientific advancements, and a recording of their conversation with Commander Torque. It ended with simple terms: withdraw all forces from Earth space, end all hostilities, begin peaceful contact if desired. You have 48 hours to respond. When the Supreme Commander saw the demonstration of human technology included in the message, his skin turned white with fear. The humans had developed in 2 years what had taken the Vrax 2 centuries, and they showed no signs of slowing down. Back on Earth, Torque was brought to a large room where representatives from Earth's nations had gathered. A video screen showed the Vrax fleet, now being escorted away from Earth by ships of human design. Your High Command has agreed to peace, Reynolds told him. They're sending a diplomatic vessel. You'll be returned to your people. What happens now? Torque asked. Reed smiled. Now we go back to doing what we do best: creating, building, exploring. She gestured to the room of human leaders. We've formed an Earth Defense Council to protect against future threats, but most of us will return to peaceful work. You won't expand. Conquer? With your technology, you could rule the galaxy within decades. Reynolds shook his head. That's the difference you never understood. We don't want to rule. We just want to live. As Torque was led away, he reflected on the greatest revelation of the war. The Vrax had evolved in constant conflict, always preparing for the next battle. Their society, technology, and culture were built around warfare. Humans had evolved differently. They created, adapted, and innovated for countless reasons beyond war. And when threatened, they could redirect all that creative energy toward defense with terrifying speed. The Vrax had spent their entire history trying to be the most powerful species in the galaxy. Humans hadn't even been trying.